Good afternoon, Minnesota Twins fans. Welcome to another episode of Twins Spotlight. My name is Seth Stows of Twins Daily. We're on episode 6 already. We've been doing generally 2 of these every week with a Twins player, a Twins prospect, kind of get to know them and things like that. So today we got a new guest, and his name, and I actually have the right date down here this time. Oops, I'm on the wrong side. His name is Cody Laweryson. He was the Twins' 14th round draft pick in 2019 out of the University of Maine. He has been featured on Twins Daily before. You may remember he was the 2019 Twins Daily short season pitcher of the year for the great work that he did while with the Elizabethton Twins and even in a spot start with Cedar Rapids. And we'll talk to him and get to know a little bit about his background and his pro debut in a weird 2020 season and much more. So with that, let's bring in Cody Laweryson. Cody, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for doing this. Let's start. Where are you at? Are you back home in Maine, or where do you make your off season?
Yep, I'm back home in Maine right now. Trying to make the most of the warm weather we got going right now. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm in northern Minnesota. I think it was 75 yesterday, and today I think it's supposed to be a high of like 38 or something like that. So take advantage of it while you can. Let's, I think you're from a small town in Maine. Talk a little bit briefly about, baseball. And again, coming from central or northern Minnesota, usually that meant you get outside in mid-April, hopefully, play a few games, and then play all summer. Was it the same where you're from, and what was that experience like for you as a youth?
Yeah, it's pretty similar weather here in Maine as it is in Minnesota. Might be a little colder in Minnesota, but yeah. So I'm from a pretty small town in Maine. It's Moscow, Maine. About 500 people in the town. Went to school with about 60 other kids. So yeah, made it a little bit harder to like field a baseball team every year. So we were playing in the lowest class in Maine. We had about 12 kids on the team. Just like tried to piece together a team every single year just so we could get out and play. Couldn't get outside till about April. I mean April if we're lucky. So made it a little bit harder. But overall, it's perfectly fine in this area. Nothing wrong with it.
Now, Moscow, Maine, again, small town. I want to say former Twins right-handed pitcher Matt Kinney is from right around there somewhere, right? Is that true?
Yep.
Do you know him or the family? I know it's one of those, there's a lot of people in Maine, but do you aware of the family?
Yeah, I live he lives in Bangor, Maine, about an hour and a half from me. And I got to see him during this whole time at home. So I was actually throwing a bullpen and he came over and watched and we talked a little baseball. So I mean it was good to get to know him for sure. He has a lot of baseball knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe he went on to some coaching after playing as well. Um, uh, Talk a little bit again, small town, smaller school, but were you able to be seen? Did you play in some of those perfect game types of national events, or did you just play your local American Legion?
I did play Legion, but I also played AAU. I played for a team based out of Portland called the Maine Lightning, and they're starting to get some national recognition now. They do a really good job getting guys recruited. It was a little bit harder for me to get recruited out of high school, just because of the area that I'm from. The competition isn't like necessarily as high as you're going to get down south in like Georgia, Florida, and all those places. So it was a little bit harder, but I got some recognition throughout New England, playing for the Maine Lightning and also playing some Legion. Played more shortstop with Legion and pitched more for AAU.
Okay. Well, so you talked a little bit about the recruiting side. You ended up going to the University of Maine. I don't think that's real far from your home. Was that an easy decision? Did you have other options? Again, coming out of a small school, I imagine that there aren't scouts at every game the way there are in Southern California or Georgia high schools or things like that.
Yeah, University of Maine was my only D1 offer actually. I got it pretty late into my junior summer, going into my senior year. So yeah, it was pretty much a no-brainer for me. Had a bunch of D3 offers from schools in Maine, a couple D2 offers in the New England area, But once I got the Division I offer from the University of Maine, it was a no-brainer for me just because I grew up watching them and going to the games on a lot of the weekends. So it was pretty cool to play for my home state.
Absolutely. And I did do a little bit of looking. Some of the alumni, I think Mark Sweeney played at Maine. And obviously, I think the big one would be Billy Swift, who was, I think, the number 1 overall pick in the early 80s one year and had a long career as well. Are those, when you go to Maine, are you thinking draft or are you just thinking another opportunity to keep playing?
When I first got there, I was like, okay, this is just another opportunity for me to keep playing baseball because I really wasn't sure where my baseball career was going to go. I wasn't like a sought after prospect at a high school, so it was just me getting another opportunity to play. And then once I started to put some good seasons together, I had a pretty good freshman year. Played summer ball, had a pretty good summer ball season as well with the Worcester Bravehearts, and then my sophomore year went pretty well as well. So I'm like, okay, maybe I have a real chance to continue playing and possibly play professional baseball. So I continued to put even more work in than what I was doing before, and I think that's how I got here.
So just kind of looking at your time at Maine, I mean, the first year you pitched out of the bullpen, and I'm guessing, not necessarily high leverage. The second year you pitched out of the bullpen, but made a few spot starts and pitched, almost 40% more innings. And then the third year you get thrown into the rotation and you make 14 starts and have a, terrific season. I mean, that progression is the progression for a lot of pitchers. What were those keys to you being able to take those steps throughout your college career? I assume, pretty good pitching coaching and things like that, but I also assume some development as well.
Yeah, my freshman year, I went into it I wanted to get any innings that I could. So I kind of got thrown into a mop-up role at first, kind of down a couple runs. I'd come in a kind of big spot with runners on base and try to get out of that jam, and then I'm out. So I've basically been in every single role as a pitcher that you could be in. I opened my sophomore year as the closer. I didn't really like that role personally as a closer. I was always a starter growing up, so it was kind of weird for me to get thrown into like a high leverage situation. Not necessarily warm. I like taking a lot of time as a starter to get warm. And then my junior year, I felt I was really comfortable just because it was a spot I'd been in my whole life in high school, even before that. So, just being a starter really helped me out.
Awesome. Again, my name is Seth Stows of Twins Daily and twinsdaily.com. Be sure to check out the site for much more Twins information all off-season long, the minors through the majors, lots of off-season topics. Want to remind you, if you're watching, whether you're watching on the Twins Daily Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, or YouTube pages, feel free to ask questions. We'll be on for about 15, 20 more minutes here, depending on how many questions we get. So I'm on today with Twins pitching prospect, 14th round pick in 2019 out of the University of Maine, Cody Laweryson. So, Cody, I want to kind of jump to that too then. As you were in your junior year, you're having a really good season. Tell us a little bit about when you started maybe noticing some scouts. Again, drafted in the 14th. You're not a first or second round pick, but if you're in the 14th round, that means somebody's watching you more than once, and multiple guys probably are. So did that happen your junior year, or did it happen maybe summer ball the year before?
I think it was a little bit in summer ball the year before. Had recognition from a few scouts. Didn't really get to talk to them that much, but people, like, I would notice them at the games. My coaches would notice them at the games. And then my junior year, once the season started, we would open up down south on our spring trip. We opened up with Florida State. So obviously there's going to be a few scouts there, not necessarily to see me, but to see some other guys. So that's a good spot to get recognition. And then once we went back up to Maine and started playing, we don't have home games till like April. So so I started to see some scouts there at the games, and I'm like, we usually don't get to see very many scouts come up to Maine and watch games just because it's so far away from every other D1 school. Like, we're like 4.5 hours from the closest D1 school. So for them to make the trip up definitely meant a little something to me. And I was thinking, like, yeah, but maybe I have a real shot now.
For sure. So, again, 14th round, is that, going into the draft, maybe after your season had finished, I'm sure then you're talking with your coaches and others a little bit more. Is that the range you were kind of hearing, or were you kind of hearing potentially other places? As a junior, you had to be, offered something, but you weren't a senior. So, yeah, well, were you hearing things on day two, maybe?
I heard a little bit on day two, but I was just kind of assuming that I was going to be a day three guy. Wasn't really sure where it was going to land. I was just hoping to get picked anywhere, and like if the money was right, because I had the leverage to go back to school the next year. But yeah, I was just thankful to get picked. The Twins called early on day three and said, you're pretty high up on the target list, so just be looking out pretty early in the day.
Awesome. And I assume, is John Wilson the scout for New England for you as well?
Yes. Yeah.
And I know that he's actually been the scout that's seen guys like Ryan O'Rourke, Cody Stashak, guys taken in that 12th to 15th round who got to the big leagues, whether it was in a bullpen role or, whatever that role may be. So he's obviously able to see something. So as he was seeing you in college, how would you have scouted yourself then, in terms of, what pitches do you throw?
Yeah, I was a fastball, changeup, and slider guy. The changeup didn't really get developed until I got into pro ball. I was just more of a fastball slider guy, throwing about 80% fastballs, just saying, "Here it is, go in and hit it." But
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I've always been. I got to attack hitters. If I walk guys, I'm not very happy about it. That's why my walk totals have been pretty low, just because I just love attacking guys and making up the ball and play, and I trust my defense.
And I got to ask this, on the draft day, what were you doing? Like you said, the Twins had called and said, hey, it could happen any of these early rounds on day three. Were you with family? Were you at school with friends? I mean, what happened when you got that call?
Yeah, they called me when they called me early in the day. I was actually at my high school getting ready to throw off the mound. I was going to throw a bullpen because I'm like, this is my bullpen day, so I'm just going to go out and throw it, no matter if I get picked up or not. I'm going to continue to get my work in and go get my bullpen in. So I finished that after they called me, and then went back home. Went on the draft tracker website just to see who was getting picked up, see if any friends and stuff were getting picked up. My parents were actually at work, so I was just home by myself, just kind of scrolling around that website. And then John Wilson called me and he said, "Yeah, we're probably gonna pick you up here in the next couple minutes." So I'm kind of freaking out, and then I call my dad because he was working up at the high school where I just was, and I'm like, "Dad, like I'm probably about to get picked. Like you should probably come home." And so yeah, he sprints out of the building. This is what he told me. He sprints out of the building, gets in the car, drives about 85 miles an hour down the road, and comes back to the house. And it was an pretty exciting moment. I had like just got picked right as he walked through the door.
I believe that the statute of limitations is passed for speeding at this point, a year and a half later. So I think we're good on that one.
Yeah,
I do have a
definitely.
question here. I want to encourage any questions, again, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook. We got a question from Facebook from Tanner, and it says, have you ever worked with the Twins pitching staff? I know, 2020 was a weird year that we'll get into. Did you get a chance to go to Target Field and meet anyone and potentially even maybe throw a bullpen with a Wes Johnson or something?
Not particularly with like the big leaguers on the Twin staff. Haven't really got to see them around very much just because this was my first spring training. We were kind of separated because they were in one place and we were in another. We were in the minor league side. So yeah, I never really got in depth with any of the pitchers or any of the big league pitching coaches. But yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So after I assume, did you sign in Fort Myers?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So, I mean, you signed pretty quickly. What was that, I guess, orientation into pro ball? You go down to Fort Myers, you get kind of checked into the academy. I assume there's just a few days where you're kind of getting to know people, doing a little bit of working out, and then you get shipped up to Elizabethton. So what was, say, the first week of being in Fort Myers and after you signed, like?
Yeah, the first week it was just us going down there, getting introduced to all the coaches and stuff like that. And then at the end of the week, we would sign. Yeah, we were kind of just hanging out in our rooms until until we ended up signing, just because they wouldn't have us do any activities before we got signed, just in case of an injury or anything like that. And then a couple days later, got on a bus from Fort Myers and headed up to Elizabethton.
Which is known as such a fun drive by Twins prospects over the last 40 years or whatever that the Twins were in Elizabethton. Obviously, that changes as we go forward here. Another kind of draft related question: Did you know any of the players in the Twins organization or anyone in the Twins organization when you got there? Maybe had you played against anyone in college or with anyone in a summer team or anything?
Yeah, I actually played with one guy that got drafted last year, Trevor Jensen, who I played with in Elizabethton for that 1 year. Played with him in the NECBL in Worcester, and
Okay.
couldn't think of anybody else really that I played against or with.
Okay. I want to jump to your time in Elizabethton and, specifically playing for a guy like Ray Smith, who's been in the Twins organization since he played in Elizabethton in the mid 70s and with the Twins for 3 years in the early 80s. And I mean, he's basically given his summers to Twins minor league baseball for all these years. And also, Jeff Reed, longtime 17-year big league career, to jump into pro ball and have that kind of a major league coaching staff, so to speak. That has to be kind of a eye opener. What were your thoughts when you got to Elizabethton and started getting into the atmosphere there?
Yeah, I knew we were all in pretty good hands as a team, just because there's a lot of big league experience between the two of them. So I listened to a lot of different things that they said with Jeff being a catcher, with the pitcher catcher relationship kind of thing. You got to know him a little bit. He helped the catchers out a lot, and they communicated to us, and it just helped us out a ton overall.
Absolutely. And then you have to put up numbers too at some point. And as we mentioned, you were the Twins Daily Short Season Pitcher of the Year. You went 1-1, and in 10 games and 41 innings, you posted a 1.76 ERA, 0.83 WHIP, 59 strikeouts to 9 walks in 41 innings. So, and I also say that, the big thing about that experience in Elizabethton is just getting used to being a professional, being a pro athlete, all of those things. So, as you look at the numbers you put up, did anything stand out for you as something you really wanted to show in year one?
I kind of just wanted to show that I attack hitters, and I'm not really afraid of pitching around any of the big hitters that guys have in the lineup. Obviously, there's spots that you want to pitch around guys just situationally, but I'll attack anybody, nobody on base. I'll go right at somebody, and all my pitches were feeling pretty good for most of the summer, so that definitely helps. So I was in a pretty good groove the whole summer.
So and again, a lot of those guys are guys just drafted out of college or guys that have been in, say, year 2 or year 3 coming out of high school or out of a international game or things like that. But then you jumped up to Cedar Rapids for one game, kind of in the middle of that. Did you know that it was going to be just one start? And I can't imagine that, going in there where you got, more experienced guys who have been playing professionally all summer. I think you have to be pretty happy with 5 shutout innings.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It was a little bit of a weird couple of days, just because I wasn't expecting it at all. I was expecting to stay in Elizabethton just because that's where a lot of the first year pitchers will stay, and that's about it, honestly.
All right. We have another question here, and again, we welcome questions. My name is Seth Stows of Twins Daily, along with Twins pitching prospect Cody Laweryson. This question is from Osbu. We'll go with Osbu. Thanks, Seth. For Cody, is there one pitch that you feel you need to develop or add in order to make it to the show? And I imagine, having a 2020 season would have helped figure that out a little bit more. But do you have a sense, using some of the analytics, of kind of what your next step in progression is?
Yeah, I've learned a lot about how all my pitches move, how my fastball moves, and how my changeup and my breaking ball move off of that. I've learned a ton about that. Just I didn't really know anything about that in high school, obviously, and in college I learned a little bit about it, but that's not something that we were really into. We we didn't really use like Rapsoda or TrackMan that much. But as for the question, I'd say probably to develop a better slider overall, because I feel like I have a pretty good feel for my changeup, can throw it in the zone basically whenever. Just to have a more consistent slider, a little bit harder, a little bit more depth. I'd say that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and obviously the Twins are kind of known for liking their spin rates and things like that. You mentioned it a little bit, but when you first came into pro ball, I imagine some of that experience was beyond throwing, beyond fielding, behind getting to know people, is getting to understand all the numbers that are out there. So did that take a little while? Is it something you were interested in? Beyond just, are you into that kind of analytical kind of thinking? And what was the big thing, that came out of that for you?
Yeah, I'm into the analytics to like a certain extent, just like your regular numbers, like ERA and stuff like that. Like I don't really look into that stuff that much because like I just go out and I try to get each hitter out, and I can determine my ERA by doing that. So it's not something I look into that much. I look into more of like movements on my fastball and where most of my fastballs are being located, looking at certain hitters and where they like fastballs and where they like off speed pitches. That's something I look more into more. But not like the biggest analytics guy overall. I just go out there and just try to get outs.
Absolutely. There's that fine line between that and, being able to use the analytics appropriately. I think that's probably the big key. So again, you came to spring training this year. Did you show up early? And, what were your initial reactions to your first spring training?
Yeah, I was there in January, mid-January. I was kind of working out with I was working with a shoulder injury, just a minor thing, just trying to get that right before our spring training officially started. Well, which ended up getting stopped right before, but just trying to work that out. I was actually just getting to throw off the mound again against hitters when they shut it down completely. So that was a little bit of a setback for me, having to come back home, not really knowing where I was gonna go throw or get my workouts in or anything. So it took a couple weeks once I got home to kind of settle into that. And then, I took all of this time to really just get as much work in as I can, just because I have nothing but time, honestly, just to go work out and get my throwing in. So it's a blessing in disguise for the baseball purpose of it. But obviously it's not the best time for America.
Yeah, or the world. But so how did you find out as far as what was going on? I know I was down there probably about the week before you guys got shut down. I came back to Minnesota. I think the next day, the players couldn't sign autographs, and then the next day the media couldn't come and it was gradually a little bit more at a time. But for you, again, I think officially camp had just started. How did you find out the news? And at that time, were you thinking it would be a missed season, or were you thinking a couple weeks, a month, maybe?
Once they shut it down, yeah, we had a big meeting with all the minor league guys in our meeting room, and they just said, yeah, we're probably going to end up sending everybody home within the next couple of days. So everyone was pretty bummed out about that, just because it was literally the first day of spring training, and like us about to play games against other teams from the area. So yeah, that kind of sucked overall.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as someone who's followed the Twins minor leagues for 15 years, I really liked watching 5 or 6 box scores every day.
Definitely.
So when you got home, did you have a program established? Did you meet with a coach weekly or every other week or something? Did you have group Zoom meetings with 120 players? What was some of that communication like with you and the organization?
Yeah, we would have coaches and trainers check in with us every single day, actually, throughout the quarantine and stuff like that, just to check in and see what we've done for the day, if we need anything to get sent up to us or anything like that. And yeah, overall, we didn't have a ton of meetings. Had some programs sent to us, like some throwing programs and lifting programs, just to try to do it as best as we can, because everyone at first we didn't have access to a gym, just because we were kind of all in our house. So we were mostly doing at home workouts, which you can only do so much with an at home workout. But once everything kind of got opened up a little bit more, it made it a little bit easier for us.
So at that point, was the shoulder feeling better? Were you able to do bullpens anywhere? Did you find someone to catch you? Did you do any live, batting practice for any hitters or anything like that throughout the summer?
I tried to do lives as much as I could, just like not a ton of people in the area I had access to. I threw about 4 or 5 lives to a few college kids, and I had a bullpen catcher who was around most of the time, which was good because not a lot of guys that I've talked to had access to a catcher. They're mostly just throwing into a net or a target or something like that. So
Sure.
I was pretty fortunate to have the support system for people to be able to come in and take some at bats off me, or just to have that bullpen catcher.
So then you found out, no minor league season, but at some point there was the okay given to do some form of instructional league. Did you do instructional league last year?
No, I did not.
Okay, so it was your first realm into, I guess, instructional league this year, which different than any other year, I'm sure. But for you, what was that experience like, and what were you able to get out of that time?
Yeah, I was pretty excited when they gave me the call, just because I knew I was going to be able to at least get a few innings in, through about 6 or 7 innings down there to some professional hitters. I was feeling really confident when I went down there, just because I had all this time at home to get better, and not necessarily play in games, but just to work on my craft overall. And I feel like, I gained a few miles an hour on my fastball, um, made big strides with my changeup and my slider. So I went down there with a ton of confidence, and just trying to do my best, and just show the coaching staff and the front office what I could do.
Were there, I'm guessing, were there a lot of protocols daily, or I think we had Matt Cantorino on a week or so ago. Spencer Steer was on. Some of your fellow draft class guys talked about, I think, weekly or biweekly testing, and I'm sure masks probably even on the field. And I'm guessing you got your own room. So, what was that? It had to be just kind of weird.
Yeah, it was a little weird. Got a little bored after a while, just because we couldn't really leave the facility. When we got there, the first 3 days, we got tested, had to go straight to our rooms and stay in there for 3 days. They would bring meals to us and stuff like that. So started to go a little bit crazy after 3 days in a room by myself. So it was a little bit interesting, but yeah, we got tested twice a week. Yeah, on Mondays and Thursdays, and then yeah, we didn't have to wear masks on the field if we were outside, for the most part. Just like if we were inside and around a lot of people, that would be the time that we would have to wear a mask. But the protocols weren't really too much to ask for, just because we're trying to keep each other safe, and just trying to finish the camp out without any problems.
All right, last few minutes with Cody Laweryson, Twins pitching prospect. If anyone's got any last minute questions, feel free to ask a question or two. So as you left instructional league, were you given a plan? Do you feel pretty good about maybe on the baseball aspect of what you have planned now for the off season, even not necessarily knowing when you'll head back to Fort Myers, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure. I think as of now, our plan is to kind of head back the same time we did last year. Not completely sure when we'll completely be able to go back, but yeah, for the program, I'm feeling pretty good going into the off season. Felt like I threw some good innings down in the instructional camp, and I'm hoping to just carry that momentum over into spring training next year.
I want to ask, and obviously feel free to answer as you wish, but 3 years at Maine, did you have a major? Is it something you're even fairly close to? Is it something you're interested in pursuing either now or in the future?
Yeah, I kind of bounced around with my majors. I went into college as a journalism major, actually, and
Oh,
I was there. I was in it for a couple of weeks, actually. I wasn't in it very long. I was like, this really necessarily isn't for me. I wasn't really into it that much, and then I moved on to kinesiology, in the teaching coaching section of it. Was in that for a couple of years, but for the rest of my freshman year and my sophomore year, was probably going to try to get into coaching after I was done with playing college baseball or professional baseball, something like that. And then I actually switched out of that too, and now I'm in business management, just to keep it kind of broad and just be able to go into a lot of different fields.
And I always like to ask, away from baseball, tell us a little bit about yourself. I see a couple of guitars in the background.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy doing? You've really had now one off season and now a weird summer, kind of away from the game. Have you learned anything about yourself over that time and what you enjoy doing or that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, actually, these guitars are they're my dad's guitars. He actually has a Twins guitar back here that he
Really?
customized himself. So yeah, he that's what he likes to do.
Oh,
He's a
wow.
bass player. He's a bass player in a band. Yeah. So yeah, he loves doing that. And for me, other hobbies, I don't really go very far outside of sports. If I'm not playing baseball or working out or anything like that, I'm probably sitting on my couch watching either baseball, basketball, football, literally anything. I'll go out, play some golf when the weather's good. Maybe play some pickup basketball once in a while. Besides that, probably just play video games or something like that. But so I don't go too far outside of sports.
All right, and you mentioned video games, so I just thought of this. I'm gonna do a quick commercial for Twins Daily writer Nick Nelson, who has just released Versus. So be sure to get your copy of Versus at versusbook.com. Nick is one of Twins' longtime writers, one of the co-owners, co-founders. It's got 25 head-to-head battles that shape the evolution of video games. So if you've ever had any interest in video games, consider buying Nick's book. Sorry to do that to you, but the other thing is, as someone growing up in Maine, I'm thinking the Red Sox are probably the closest team. Was that the team of New England, or did you have other favorite players or favorite teams?
Yeah, the rest of my family is Red Sox fans, but I was actually a Yankees fan growing up.
Oh
Um,
boy.
so the whole house here was Red Sox fans, and I was the only Yankees fan, just because like I mean, some of my other family is Yankees fans, and I kind of sided with them over my parents and my
Just to
sisters.
rebel.
So yeah, yeah, it was. We didn't really argue that much about it. Me and my dad would just love to watch baseball together. Yeah, I'd watch all the Red Sox games anyway, just because
Yeah.
I would watch baseball. So yeah, we didn't have too much of a controversy.
All right. So if this wasn't live, I would have to edit out the whole being a Yankees fan thing for a Twins podcast, but we'll let it go. It's all good. These are the old. I assume
Yeah.
you and your dad are now big Twins fans.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Did you watch a lot of the season? I mean, like you said, you watched a lot of games. I assume the Red Sox games are on your TV, but I mean, do you watch the national games? Were you able to watch any Twins games? Do you get the MLB package?
Oh yeah, I actually did. Me and my dad would sit down a lot and watch a lot of the Twins games. Definitely watch them more than any other team, obviously, just because I've seen those guys around and like it's pretty cool to watch them on TV, just because I've seen them work before. And yeah, it was pretty cool to follow their whole season with me not having a bunch of time.
Well, it'll be nice to get back to a normal, hopefully, spring training, hopefully in 2021, because one of the cool things about the Twins facilities is seeing the big leaguers go down to the minor league side and playing games at various levels, or you may pitch in a minor league game to a big league catcher, and may see players from other teams, or vice versa. They have a lot of the minor league guys sometimes play the later innings, so I mean, you'll get to know them more and more, and I think that's cool for the players, but even for the fans, just to see that between the two sides. But Cody, I want to say thank you. This has been a little longer than I thought it might be, but I think that's okay as long as you're okay with it, because it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed getting to know you a little bit, and again, hopefully we can get back to a normal spring training. I can meet you down in Fort Myers next February.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And again, if you don't mind sticking around, but I do want to just thank everyone who's listened this whole time. If you listen later, please feel free to send feedback. Tweet me at Seth Tweets, or give us your thoughts on Twins Daily. We'll be back on Wednesday with another Twins Spotlight. No off-season live on Tuesday night. There will be one on Thursday night where Nick and some guests will be talking about potential trade targets for the Twins this offseason. With that, again, thank you for listening. Have yourselves a great day. And, of course, go Twins.